did get to ask my question. I appreciated that. I didn't have to go nuclear again. Yeah, I mean, it's the simple things, right? Like, I'm a reporter on this beat, and I just want to ask a question to the head coach of the football team. Like, what a concept. So, but anyways, it is what it is.
Are you going to share your question with us, Dillon?
Yeah, well, I mean, I shared it last week, and I didn't get 2 weeks ago. I didn't get to ask the damn thing.
Let's get it. And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback. The truth is, Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those. You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country. And welcome in, our boys back. We got Dillon. I don't know if you were with me yesterday or not, but we went live. Dillon was to join me about 15 minutes into the episode. 15 minutes rolls around. I'm looking down here at the little notification box. I've got no Dillon. Somewhat panicking because, I had a bunch of notes for my conversation with Dillon and nothing else. I winged it. And I think I did a pretty good job. I don't think anybody could tell. But we winged it cold for like an hour, right? And it went pretty well, I think. I think it went pretty well. But come to find out, Dillon had a good reason for not joining me, which I'll let him tell you himself when we get to that portion of the show. But first, welcome into Juckonbucks. Appreciate y'all so much for joining me on a Thursday. Tomorrow, we're going to go a little more in depth into the slate of games this week. I'll make my pick. Talk about the most interesting story of the week to me, which is certainly Josh Heupel returning to Oklahoma, where he was the quarterback, the offensive coordinator. Things did not end well there. A whole lot of bad feelings, and he goes back into Oklahoma tomorrow with the Tennessee Volunteers, ranked number 6 in the country. Tennessee not won a road game against a top 15 team since 2006. He's going to go in as the favorite tomorrow. He's going to go in as the favorite Saturday, and it is going to be electric. What an environment that's going to be in Norman. These guys have been getting, everybody thinks, first off, their win total for the beginning of the year was 7.5. So they feel incredibly disrespected. Everybody on the team, the whole fan base. Meanwhile, their rival, Texas, getting all this love, now number 1 in the country. And Oklahoma, they feel like they're playing second fiddle. It's going to be a great game, compelling storyline. That one will be, I think, standalone as the only good game in the evening. The USC Michigan game is a 3:30 game. Colorado is going to be hosting Baylor opposite the game of the week, and that is Oklahoma hosting Tennessee. Be interesting to see what kind of numbers those two games get going opposite each other. You're going to have two very different audiences on that. Just, I'll be looking out for it. I'll let you know. But Friday, we'll go over the games in a little more detail, the big games of the weekend, as well as the Buckeyes game. Not that there's a ton to go through. We know that this rush defense for Marshall, not so hot, and I expect the Buckeyes to absolutely run through them. Josh Fryar had something to say Wednesday after practice. Josh Fryar said that last year there were a lot of practices where he wasn't very tired, but this year he's out of breath between every play that they're working so hard, which is always really nice to hear when you're not the one on the other side of that. But Ryan Day it's a different attitude. It's a different attitude around the program. Things are juicy, and I love that they're using that word juice, and me and Dillon will get into that. But as far as Will Howard goes, when I think of Will Howard, I don't put him in the top 10 quarterbacks in the country, but I think he has the ability, every week to maybe pop up into that category for the week. 247 did the top 20 quarterbacks of last week, and I wanted to go through it real quick just to see where Will Howard was. And when I looked down through, I wasn't so happy, so I'm going to read it with you. Cam Ward, number 1. Obviously, Cam Ward is the Heisman front runner. He had a great week last week, 5 touchdowns, 346, 19 for 28. Jackson Dart, number 2, also had a really good week against Wake Forest, 377 yards, completed 76% of his passes. And I don't know if you heard, but Ole Miss and Wake Forest were doing a home and home, and they played the first leg of it Saturday, And then Wake Forest pulled out of the second leg. I don't know why. I don't have any more details on it other than Lane Kiffin is obviously very irritated because that's a Bush League thing to do. As we know, these schedules are made years in advance. So if you pull out on somebody, they can't just go ask the next guy to play that game with them next year because they've already got a game to be played. So they put them in a really tough spot. They're going to probably have to add I don't know what they're going to do. They probably already have an FCS on their schedule, so they're probably going to have to add another one. But, crappy situation. Number 3, Dillon Gabriel. Dillon was 20 for 24 for 291, 2 touchdowns, also had that long breakaway run for a touchdown. Number 4, Jaden Milroe, 12 of 17 at Wisconsin for 196, 3 touchdowns, but he also ran for 75 yards. I don't know if he would have been my number 4. Number 5, they've got Carson Beck. Now, Carson Beck at Kentucky was dreadful, and I don't know how you can justify this here. Number 6, Shedeur Sanders. Number 7, Dylan Raiola, the last true freshman to complete 70% of his throws during their first 3 games. Marcus Mariota in 2012. Pretty impressive. Number 8, Avery Johnson. I watched Avery play the other night. It was okay. Will played better. Number 9, Arch. Number 10, Nico Iamaleava. Number 11, Josh Hoover of TCU. Who? Number 12, Eli Holstein from Pittsburgh. 13, Brady Cook from Mizzou. 14, Alan Bowman from Oklahoma State. That's the other guy that's in his 7th year, opposite Cam Rising. 2 dudes in their 7th year. Number 15, Curtis Rourke, the Ohio University transfer up in Indiana. That dude's pretty good. Number 16, Billy Edwards from Maryland. 17, Hank Brown from Auburn. That was his first start ever. Now I'm getting irritated. Number 18, Luke Altmaier from Illinois. Number 19, Marcel Reed, Texas A&M. His first start ever. And number 20, Baron Morton for Texas Tech. They're totally crapping on our guy, man. This is 100% disrespect. I don't know why this guy never gets any accolades for what he does, but I watched 4 or 5 of those quarterbacks in that bottom and saw their stat lines. Nothing special at all. Will, meanwhile, was fantastic operating that offense. So, that's fine. Whatever. Doesn't matter. But I do want to talk about wide receivers because on the flip side, while the quarterback play, they might not want to acknowledge it, they can't help but recognize J.J. Smith. And coming into this season, there was a big argument as to whether or not Ohio State's or Oregon's was the best wide receiver room in the sport. And I did a breakdown of the 2 rosters. And I did the side-by-side or the head-on-head comparison for Ohio State and for Oregon. And I was contending that by the time Ohio State plays Oregon, going into the season, Ohio State's was not better. But by the time they played, it absolutely would be better because JJ would have then 6 games to get it together. Here's what I said. This is a very proven room over at Oregon. JJ Smith, not yet proven. Carnell Tate, not really yet proven. We think we know what he can do. Because Oregon's wide receiver room is more proven, it kicks him up a little notch. But if I'm ranking these guys, I'm going J.J. Smith, Evan Stewart, Emeka Egbuka, Tez Johnson, Carnell Tate, Trayshawn Holden, which gives Ohio State the win here. But it's close. But I think it's closer than it's going to be by the time we see them in week 6. But these are 2 of the very best wide receiver rooms in the country. There's no doubt about it. I will also note that even though Brandon Inniss is unproven, I think by the time this game rolls around, he will be number 6 on that list. He's going to overtake Holden as that number 6 guy, which puts a little more of a gap between the Ohio State wide receivers and the Oregon wide receivers, and the Buckeyes win a little more comfortably in this battle. So that's what I said. Now, I think my prediction about as the season goes on and the Buckeyes are going to kind of separate a little bit here, take a little bit of a bigger lead. I think so far that's proven to be true. I think JJ, nobody expected him to come out this fast out of the gate, nor do we expect Ohio State to kind of be running their passing game through him. And that's certainly what's happening so far. We'll see if we see that again against Marshall. But remember the first two games, 6 targets in the first half of both games. Pretty doggone impressive. Where I missed so far, Brandon Innes, just through 2 games yet, but, Trayshawn Holden been pretty damn awesome so far. So not quite there yet on that one, but definitely the Buckeyes with a little validation here, as On3 has ranked their top 10 wide receivers in the country, starting off with T-Mac at Arizona, who is absolutely hands down the best wide receiver right now in the country. Number 2, Trey Harris from Ole Miss. Through 3 games, he has 27 receptions, 400 yards, 5 touchdowns. Pretty damn impressive. Luther Burden at number 3, Missouri, 13 receptions, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Number 4, Travis Hunter, through 3 games, 30 receptions, 342, and 5 touchdowns. Number 5, Emeka Egbuka, 2 games, 9 receptions, 149, no touchdowns. That's respect right there, because his stats do not match that at all. Number 6, Xavier Restrepo of Miami, 3 games, 14 receptions, 263, and 2 touchdowns. Number 7, Kyron Lacey of LSU, 3 games, 17 receptions, 222 yards, 5 touchdowns. Number 8, J.J. Smith, the Buckeyes, the only guys with 2 receivers on this top 10 list. 2 games, 11 receptions, 211 yards, 3 touchdowns. Number 9, Tez Johnson, that's Oregon's first guy on the list. 3 games, 22 receptions, 190 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And number 10, Isaiah Bond, Alabama transfer now at Texas. 3 games, 13 receptions, 215 yards, and 3 touchdowns. JJ being in people's top 10 wide receivers lists through 2 games of his college career, it's almost as staggering as everything else he does. Like to be given that much respect so far on a national scale, it's amazing. I thought this is how it would go. Not quite this quick. Through 2 games is just crazy to have him in top 10s already. But that's what the guy is. He's just amazing. All right. My conversation did not go as planned, obviously, with Dillon on Wednesday morning. Let's try again. Here's our guy, Dillon Davis from the Delaware Gazette, the best beat reporter on the beat, certainly the most entertaining and the one we like the best here at Juckonbucks. Dillon. And joining us now, our buddy Dillon. Dillon was supposed to be with us on the live show on Wednesday morning. I started the show. He was coming in at 15 minutes, and I looked down. Dillon was nowhere to be found. Dillon, where were you, buddy?
I'll tell you where I was. I was sitting here on my computer hoping you'd text me back with the link to the show so I could join. And after about a half hour, I quickly realized that, and I understood you were doing live. So I was like, he's probably not even going to pay attention to his phone. And about a half hour later, I was like, this isn't going to happen. So,
Yeah, I screwed up, guys. Apologize. But I got him back. He didn't hold it against me too much, a little bit.
Mistakes happen, man. I get it, especially when things are going live. So,
yeah, for sure. So, Dillon, Tuesday night, you had access to Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, Will Howard. Ryan Day, a bit of a serious tone, bro. What do you think? Is he dialed into Marshall, or is he pissed off about having a bye week?
I just think that, it's, I think he's just it's a continuation of what he's been like, for the most part. He's just, all business again. I don't know. I don't know, something happened or he got some news he didn't like. I have no idea, but it just seemed like he was dialed in. I don't know. I don't think it's anything particular to Marshall. I don't think Marshall has his attention that much. I know obviously they're preparing hard for him, but I don't think he's, super worried about, the Marshall Thundering Herd. I just think in general, he's just locked in. And maybe a continuation of they talked about improvement week and taking that week seriously, and maybe that was just kind of carried over into this week. And he said today that they have had another spirited start to the practice week, so maybe it's just a continuation of what they were trying to accomplish last week.
Thundering Herd, as far as college nickname goes, it's up there. It's pretty damn good. I like it. Yeah, really good.
It's unique. So
yeah, you guys got some O-line talk in. Mm-hmm. Donovan Jackson definitely coming back. He said about Austin Seerveld again, and we talked about this last week, he really wants to find ways to work him in. And then he said, Tegra, the starter for now, we'll see how it plays out. Yeah. That I found really interesting because obviously they both had their first and second starts together. Just my opinion. Tegra looked looked really, really good. Austin looked good too, but I don't know, man. Tegra's worked for this job. That's kind of the way it went. It really surprised me to hear him say that. Did you get anything further on that, or do you have a read on that different than I do? I'm just not quite sure what to make of it.
No, I think it's two parts here. I think with the Austin Cerebell thing, and he mentioned trying to find Austin a way to play, but just for anybody who's not already well versed in Ryan Day's vernacular or the way he goes about some of these things. Anytime Ryan Day says that somebody deserves to play, and then he follows it up by saying, "Well, what that looks like this week, we don't know, or we'll see how the week goes, and whatnot," is basically saying like, "Hey, I want to play this guy if the situation arises in a game." So, and that's what you call playing depth. That's what the garbage time is. So like, when he said, Austin Cerebell deserves to play, what that looks like this week means that once again, Austin Cerebell is back to being, number two on the two deep at guard. And if Ohio State gets a big lead, which I think we all think they will at some point, he'll get to play. But that doesn't mean in any way, shape, or form that Austin Cerebell is going to relieve Donovan Jackson or Tegra Shabola in the first half of a game. So there's that. As far as Tegra goes, I did find that interesting that it was kind of more of a non-committal approach the way he took that question. He did mention that Tegra played well, so I mean, I don't think that Ryan Day has any reason to be looking at, making a move off of Tegra at all. But it did seem to me like, I don't know why there wasn't just kind of a firm, like, yeah, no, Tegra's a starter and he's playing well.
Yeah.
We're excited about Tegra. I did find that interesting. So again, I don't think that Tegra's in danger of losing his job. He still has to prove himself. Look, he's played 2 games. So, he still has to prove himself week after week and then throughout practice as well. And then certainly with Austin, the way he played, that makes it, a little more interesting because now Ryan Day and Justin Fry know they have a capable body, to put in there if Tegra were to falter or not, not play well. But for right now, there's nothing that we've gotten, especially with Ryan Day saying as much with the way Tegra's playing that he's in danger of losing his job for now. But I did find that interesting as well, just the way he phrased that whole response.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He did mention that the interior of Marshall's defensive line was going to be a good challenge for the guys. So that's pretty cool. We'll get to see Tegra against maybe the best competition yet that he's had to go against. Of course, he'll be next to Seth McLaughlin, who makes everything easier. Seth bringing the juice. We heard juice thrown around a couple times. It's what I've been using for a little while now, an old Urban Meyer phrase that I really feel fits with this team. It's something we haven't seen. So I love to hear them kind of bringing that back. On that defensive line of ours, the second and third guy in, the third and fourth guy in the middle, we got Caden, we got Hero, and then he was talking about the guys after that. Brought up Will Smith, brought up Tywone, brought up Jason Moore. My question is about Jason Moore. Jason Moore, a guy that we were told in spring was really coming along, obviously got tremendous physical gifts. And it just seems like he's kind of disappeared from the plans. The snap count really, really low. Any word on what's going on with Jason Moore?
No, not in particular. And just the unfortunate part of this is we don't get position coaches throughout the year, throughout the season. It's just unfortunate because, look, at the end of the day, I know there are plenty of questions that I would like to know, like the Buckeye fans would like to know and whatnot, but are we going to spend, the one question that we get, if we get a question in a press conference asking about reserve defensive linemen, and that makes it tough.
Yeah.
So no, I haven't heard a whole lot more on Jason Moore. I will say, just like most people, I'm very surprised at his lack of, snap count, just given what we heard in the spring and even going into early camp that, he was a guy that was pushing to be in that group and firmly in that rotation. And, people were excited about that. He was a big time recruit. And, obviously his frame, there's plenty to be desired there and seeing that out on the field. So I'm a little bit surprised and disappointed that we haven't seen a little more Jason Moore, but I can't tell you, what's happened to him or, or why he's not going to, or if he will see more time in the weeks to come. But certainly a little bit of a mystery there. I would agree.
Did you get a question in this time, Dillon?
I did. I got
You did. Fantastic.
Yeah, fourth or fifth question of the press conference, which it doesn't matter when you get your question. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to when you do that, but it's always nice the earlier you get them because obviously the more questions that are asked, it kind of dwindles down, your list of things that you wanted to ask, unless you had something that's truly off the wall, that other people aren't going to ask. So, but yeah, I did get to ask my question. I appreciated that. I didn't have to go nuclear again. Yeah, I mean, it's the simple things, right? Like, I'm a reporter on this beat, and I just want to ask a question to the head coach of the football team. Like, what a concept. So, but anyways, it is what it
Are
is.
you going to share your question with us, Dillon?
Yeah, well, I mean, I shared it last week, and I didn't get 2 weeks ago. I didn't get to ask the damn thing, but
The same one?
yeah, I mean, I asked about Caleb Downs, and I mean, it was a perfect bye week question because it was kind of something that I felt like I had a general idea of what he would say, but certainly was curious to get him on the record as saying it. And I asked him about Caleb Downs, the offensive weapon, and what's happened with that. We heard a lot about it in the preseason. We were told it was part of the recruiting pitch to get him to Ohio State. So where we asked where that was at, or I asked where that was at, and what where that stood. And I kind of built into the question, like, is this a break glass in case of emergency situation where like it's still there, but like they're not going to use it unless they absolutely need to. And that's kind of the way I took his answer was that it sounds like it's still there. Like it sounds like it's not dead, that they're like, maybe we shouldn't use Caleb Downs as an offensive weapon. It sounds like it's still very much there if they need to use it. And I assume if they need to use it from a depth standpoint. And I asked about James Peoples too, if that's changed his perspective on using Caleb Downs as well. And he credited James and even Sam Williams Dixon, for, the way they've come on and whatnot. But his answer was that for now, they're going to focus on Caleb Downs being the best safety in the country, which, oh, by the way, when the first time they mentioned Caleb Downs playing offense and we had that conversation on one of your shows, I can't remember if you said the same thing or not, but I was, of the mindset to like, please don't just go out there and let him be, the Thorpe Award winner this year and don't get him hurt, trying to take an end around or, an option pitch or something like that. So that's where they're at.
That was definitely what you said. My opinion on the matter was let the best player on the team do whatever the hell he wants.
Right.
No, but here's the thing, Dill. He's the guy that brought it up. Ryan Day brought it up. Nobody asked him about this. Like, he brought it up out of the blue one day, like just out of nowhere. And everybody was like, what in the hell is he talking about?
Yeah.
So, like, you want to bring it up and then poo-poo it when Dillon asks about it 2 months later. All right, whatever, man. We get it.
Yeah. It was I mean he gave me an honest answer. And again, I guess I still believe that based off his answer that like it's still a part of it. I just think that it's more of like they're not going to do it unless they really feel like they need to do it. And I would assume unless just the absolute disaster scenario hits in the running back room, that with the emergence of James Peoples as a guy who I think could be a feature back right now, if in a different world, I don't foresee a scenario where they're going to need to do that. And I think that's best for Ohio State anyways, but I don't think it's entirely dead. So, hopefully we don't have to find out, but maybe we'll see down the road.
We learned this week from one of my favorite newish head coaches in the Big Ten, Matt Rule, that all the Big Ten coaches have a group text.
Yeah.
They have a group text chat, and I just got to thinking about the different personalities and kind of who would be the guy, who's the meme guy, who's the funny guy. Somebody actually asked him, who is the funny guy in that chat? He would not answer that question.
No.
He did get into some analytics, and I think that he might have added some more onto that today. Do you have any information on what analytics they're using?
Yeah, so that was new to everybody, unless to my knowledge, I don't think anybody really knew about that. And to that point, somebody asked for a follow up on it today during our lightning round at the Woody tonight, and he just, he didn't really talk about the company itself that they went out and partnered with and whatnot, but he did shed some light into like what they're analyzing and what they're trying to figure out, and I guess this company kind of just takes stock of everything that's happening in the college football world on a given week and everything that's happened in the NFL in various situations, and those situations could be when to go for two, when to call your timeouts, when to punt and where from on the field and things like that. And they're just kind of, taking stock of all that and giving that feedback back to Ryan and saying, this is how everybody else is doing it. And then Ryan and the coaching staff can kind of compare what they've done or how they've approached things in certain situations to what everybody else is doing and kind of go from there and pass that information along. So it's just another tool. It's just another tool to make sure that they feel like they're doing, the best things they can do in certain situations where, obviously big situations as well. People might not think that third quarter timeout was a big deal, but it could be a very massive deal, come the end of the game. Certainly, as well, going for two, I know that's a big thing now and people don't understand it. It's a whole it's an entirely different, world of philosophy in terms of people going for two. And, for all of us who've been watching football for years, you just, initially you think, well, why? It doesn't make any sense and whatnot. Well, there are numbers behind that. I promise you, they didn't. These coaches just haven't all of a sudden started saying like, well, screw it, let's just go for two here. Like there are numbers behind it. I'd be interested to do a deep dive into those numbers. That'd be a really fun thing, but I don't have access to those numbers. I'm not going to compile those numbers myself. That's sure as hell not going to happen. So, I'm curious what those numbers are, but those are the kind of things. That's the analytics that he's getting, the feedback that he's getting. So if you ever see Ohio State go, for two in an obscure spot, you can think back to those analytics and say, well, that's whatever they told him. That's why he did it. So,
yeah. Chip got up there. Chip said he believes that all four of these tight ends, the top four tight ends, have kind of earned their spots and earned the playing time that they're getting. We know that Ryan Day kind of used a couple of press conferences up there to maybe call out Jelani a little bit with his focus, and it was definitely directed for him to hear. It seems like Jelani's been progressively getting better and better. I think Ryan Day acknowledged that. And that's great to hear. As far as snap count, he's right up there with G. He's right up there with Will Kazmarek. Bennett Christian got a lot of snaps as well. Do you think that any of these guys are going to get pared down anytime soon, or do you think they're going to keep rolling with all four of these guys just kind of playing a whole lot?
I think G and Will are still like your two tight ends. Like I think that however Ohio State's offense looks when as the season progresses and the stakes get ramped up and the games get bigger and you find yourself in second half of games where they're tighter. I mean, those are your two guys. How much Ohio State continues to run 13 and 14 personnel with 3 and 4 tight ends on the field, I don't know. That was kind of part of what Chip was asked about the tight ends. It was just their emergence there being Jelani and Bennett Christian. How much leeway that affords him to do things like having 3 or 4 tight ends on the field at one time. So how much of that continues on in the season, I don't know. I guess that'll speak volumes about just how much trust they had and faith they have in Jelani and Bennett Christian to be on the field. If they're going to be able to continue, obviously, they can't run 13 and 14 personnel without, facing those guys. So that remains to be seen. I did really enjoy Ryan's comments about Jelani and just about how coachable he's been and, and how much more focused he is in meeting rooms and whatnot, which is the question that was always the case with Jelani. Obviously we knew physically, that he was, super talented and just a true mismatch, just a matchup nightmare if you can get him on the field. But you've got to have trust in the guy to know what he's doing, on a consistent basis. There would be times where he would know what he was doing, but it always came back to the word consistency with Jelani. So I was glad to hear that about them. But yeah, I mean, I still think that you're going to G and Will are your two guys, for much of what this offense is going to do. The only question is, will they run 13, 14 personnel? Is that going to be a regular part of their offense, as games get bigger and the games get tighter as a result? If they do that, then they're going to have those two guys on the field, and they won't do it if they don't have trust in them. So, I fully expect if you continue to see 13 and 14, they obviously have trust in them. If you stop seeing that as the season progresses, that tells me that they're just not comfortable putting those two guys on the field together, in big football games. But I don't expect you to see Bennett Christian and Jelani Thurman getting, decent reps, as one of the top 2 tight ends on the field, just like in 12 personnel. I don't see that at all.
God, come on, dude. It's time. It's Jelani time, Dillon.
I agree. I mean, especially in the red zone.
Here's my issue. Okay. Jelani's going to miss some assignments every now and again, and that might blow up a play. But I watched G miss 4 blocks in the last game that blew up a play. You know what I mean? Like it's the same thing here, and you're missing out on the mismatch with Jelani.
I agree. I mean, and even if you talk about missing assignments and things like that, you cannot tell me that you can't get this kid ready. And Ryan Day credited his focus and his coachability recently, but you cannot tell me that they can't get Jelani ready to be, a guy in the red zone, just that they can't trust him enough to do what he has to do on, this handful of stuff that they can put him in there and also utilize the kind of mismatch he would be in the red zone. I don't believe that at all. So I'm not sure about that. I get the frustration because I totally agree that, I don't know.
I love loyalty. Loyalty to your older players can also get, it can set your team back when you're not playing the best guy for the job. But
We've seen it at Ohio State
yeah,
before.
we've
So
seen it a lot. We've
yeah.
seen it a lot with this regime, to be honest.
Yep.
And it is what it is. Speaking of that same topic, kick return. Talked about Jaden Ballard. Anything new come of this?
Yeah, so Ryan said that Brandon Ennis has been returning kicks throughout the bye week
Okay.
and this week. He did say that he's not sure yet, who's going to return the first kick on Saturday because Jaden Ballard's still returning kicks as well. He said they did a decent amount of kickoff work, kickoff return work, and kickoff work today, and they would evaluate that film. I don't know how much film you need to evaluate for a kick returner. Catch the ball. Don't try to fair catch the ball. But anyways, they said they're going to evaluate that. So basically, it was just Ryan saying, "I'm not going to tell you who it's going to be yet," but he said they'd make that decision probably tomorrow and whatnot. So Brandon Ennis is certainly an option back there, and Jaden Ballard's still back there as well. Ryan was asked if he thought that they could put Brandon Ennis back there for both punts and kickoffs in addition to his receiver duties, and Ryan didn't bat an eye when he said yeah, he believes that they can put all that on Brandon Ennis. So I don't think that's a concern at all. So if you ask me, then between all of that, then if something happened to the point where you needed to reevaluate it and you believe that Brandon Ennis can do it and everything, then why not put him back there? So it's a shame that they have to, though. It's just one more. It's just one more thing that he has to do. It's one more play he's exposed on potentially and whatnot. But here we are. It is what it is. So if he can do it, then then put him back there. And I tend to believe that he will be. So, we'll see.
That's interesting, man. I mean, I didn't think that they would go with him because they're using him on punts. He's doing, but hey, I'm all for it because you get to a certain point where it's one too many mistakes, one too many years for me when it comes to Ballard. Like that, I've seen enough. The Buckeyes, Dillon, are according to FanDuel now the odds-on favorite to win the national championship. I don't know if you saw this. They've been running second forever, and I've been saying forever they're going to be the favorite. And finally, I thought they would be right before the season came out, right before the first game. And it has taken into 2 weeks of the season. The Buckeyes now the favorites to win the national championship, followed by Georgia, then Texas, then Bama, then Oregon. Buckeyes are plus 330, Oregon plus 950, and that rounds out the top five. Any thoughts on that? You knew it all along?
No, well, I don't know how much of that is relative to the way these odds makers are kind of like handicapping the conferences as well, because I still feel like I still feel like Ohio State and Georgia should be, co-favorites. I still feel like those two teams are the most complete teams in the country. But also I understand that Georgia's their path to a national title is maybe a little bit, tougher than Ohio State's right now, like just based on what I think of the Big Ten. So I don't really have thoughts on that. I'm a betting guy. I do bet, but I try not to bet on the Buckeyes just because it just seems like bad juju. So yeah, I don't really have much of a thought on it. I'm not surprised by it at all. But I still feel like I'm a little surprised that they're just co-favorites or not that there isn't a co-favorite, that they're the sole favorites of college football in that regard. But that'll change, I'm sure. If Ohio State goes out to Oregon, obviously if they get beat, but even if they struggle in Georgia, I don't know who Georgia plays that week. But if Georgia goes out and has
so Georgia plays opposite. Ohio State plays Michigan State that night. Georgia's playing Alabama. Opposite same time, so that's going to be one heck of an evening for us.
I was talking about Oregon, but that's the same point. If Ohio State goes out and just has a ho hum win over Michigan State on the road, but Georgia goes out and beats Alabama, those odds will change again. I'm sure with Georgia being back up as your sole favorite. So,
have you watched Aiden Childs, Michigan State's quarterback, at all?
I haven't watched a whole lot of them yet. I certainly hear about them. I believe they played on a Friday in week 1, and I cover high school games on Friday. So I wasn't able to watch them then yet. And then I don't think there's been a time where I've been able to watch them without being at the stadium and whatnot. And frankly, Michigan State wasn't on my list of, things I wanted to watch, if I got a chance to watch games. So, but I've heard a little bit about him,
He's dynamic, buddy. He's dynamic. He'll throw three sweet touchdowns and 3 unbelievably bad picks.
Sure.
It'll be turnover city, but he's going to be fun to watch. I'm excited for that game. I'm excited to finally get to a real, game with some Big Ten players. I wanted to ask you about something. So there's been some stuff in the news recently, some guys saying that now that you are basically a paid professional, I'm talking about some of the higher profile guys in college football, that you've kind of opened yourself up to a certain amount of criticism that maybe otherwise people would have not given to college players in the past. What are your thoughts on that?
Right, wrong, or indifferent, I totally agree with that notion, and I think rightfully so. To be honest with you, I think at the end of the day, anybody who is a professional at what they do, and by definition, being paid to do something makes you a professional at it. Anybody who's a professional at what they do opens himself up to criticism and critique. I'm not saying that it's all warranted. I'm not saying that any of it's even correct, but just in general, that's part of the world that you live in as a paid professional. And look, certainly, especially when you think about the nature of how these guys are getting paid and who's supplying that money. I don't want to hear people talk about like, well, these guys are still college kids. Like, yeah, you're right in like the literal sense of the of the title, they are college kids, but whatnot. But what they're doing now, especially the higher profile guys, with their endorsements and getting paid just to play in general. I don't feel sorry. Now, obviously, just like even with professional athletes, with or like the NFL guys, I should say, even with 35-year-olds in the NFL or the NBA, whatever the case may be, there's a line that gets crossed all the time, and it's disgusting, sure, and I hate it and whatnot. But just in terms of criticism and people having thoughts, even mean thoughts, that don't cross the line, but they're just not very nice. I don't feel sorry for these kids. I really don't, because that's the world we live in now. And if you're going to get paid like a professional, then I expect these guys to be able to let that stuff go like professionals need to. So that's what I think about it.
I guess for me, and I'm with you. But what I think is not most people, maybe a lot of people don't quite understand that there aren't a lot of these guys that are making that kind of money.
Sure.
A lot of these dudes aren't really making much money at all. And I don't think anybody knows the difference. But I suppose the ones that are catching that kind of criticism are probably pretty high profile guys that are making that kind of money.
That's a fair point too, because there's no like existing like physical line between the criticism that you might give Jeremiah Smith and the money he's making, as opposed to like the money that Josh Fryar is making and the criticism he gets. Like there's no discrepancy there. People are going to talk about Josh Fryar the same way they're going to talk about any of these guys that are making $1 million to be at Ohio State. So that's a fair point too. I guess I was just speaking like literally about these guys that are making that kind of money, but I also understand that like you open yourself up to the people who aren't, and like you said, there are plenty more on these teams who still contribute to these football teams that aren't making a fraction of what what some of the big stars are making. So that's a fair point too. I don't feel sorry for the guys, but at the same time, they got it's entirely about these guys being paid for me. So the guys that aren't getting paid like that, I don't feel like maybe they should have to deal with as much as some of these other guys. But I also understand you can't regulate that. So it's a tough spot.
Well, basically all spring, all preseason camp, the Michigan beat, who is not like most beats in the country, and for whatever reason, it's just very different. They're very much fanboys of the program. They pumped out all along that Alex Orji was something special, and these fans up there were looking forward to a guy that they were calling the next Cam Newton, someone who's going to be like Milroe at Alabama. And clearly the guy that came along was Davis Warren, who was making a push and making a run. And the word there was he was a guy who would have been a 5-star, but got cancer, a great story. We saw him play. He wasn't going to be a 5-star. He supplanted the Cam Newton kid. And now they're going back to the Cam Newton kid. Do you think that I really believe that that situation that we had down at Florida State, remember we talked about it, how they were mad at the beat writers?
Yeah.
They were mad at the beat writers for selling them a bill of goods on Florida State. Do you think they had a similar situation going up in there?
Look, I'll preface all this by saying I don't know the first thing about what these people are being fed by the Michigan beat on a regular basis. I see things on Twitter like anybody else does. I'm on Twitter daily and a lot throughout each day. So I see things that Michigan fans are saying, or some Ohio State fans who kind of lurk in in those message boards, what they pull off and put on Twitter and stuff like that.
I'm a big lurker.
Yeah, I get it. It's fun. Back, in the day, being on MGO blog, and just reading some of those things was just pure entertainment. So I understand it. But so I'm not gonna sit here and say I have like a well-founded opinion on the Michigan beat and what they're doing or not doing up there and whatnot. The whole thing seems weird to me up there. I know that. I know Ohio State fans like to throw the word cult around up there, and the big blue wall that exists up there. And it's just, I would agree that it's weird. I don't know how these guys presented these quarterbacks. I don't know how they documented the quarterback battle throughout the camp. What they were actually saying, or people were trying to read between the lines, or people were just saying stuff that wasn't true. I don't know that. So I don't want to misspeak on that. But like, if the Michigan beat really tried to present Michigan fans with Davis Warren as this guy who was like, hey, he would have been a 5-star if it wasn't for the cancer, and like this guy has just surged past the rest of the quarterback room, so which that means something, then that's absolute horseshit. Because look, I mean, Davis Warren is the amazing blue version of Joe Bauserman. With all due respect to Joe Bauserman, like, I mean, he still lives in infamy for Ohio State fans as perhaps the worst to ever do it in the modern era at Ohio State. Right? That's just and Davis Warren's every bit on that level. Like it was bad. And so if they tried to sell Michigan fans, this bill of goods, this guy was a more than capable quarterback at Michigan. Michigan fans should be pissed off. And and the same thing with Alex Orji. We're going to find out about Alex Orji on Saturday. And we heard so much about Alex Orji. They should already be mad at the Michigan beat, because of how much they talked up Alex Orji, only for him to not win the job. Heck, at some point we heard Jack Tuttle scuttle. Mm-hmm. Like there were talks about Jack Tuttle potentially being that guy, and then he had the injury, So yeah, Michigan fans, I totally understand Michigan fans if they're pissed off at the Michigan beat. I just don't think that they are. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but I don't think Michigan fans are. I just think they're so far up the asses of that beat, like that it just doesn't matter.
I get the same impression. I get the same impression as you do. I don't think they are.
And honest to goodness, if there are Michigan fans watching this at all, like honest to goodness, this has nothing to do with the rivalry or being a Michigan fan and Ohio State fans. Honest to goodness, I don't I truly say Michigan fans should be pissed off about what's happened. What they've been fed going back to last year and the whole everything with the Connor Stallion stuff and how that played out. Like, I mean, if you could honestly remove your bias from that situation, like the Ohio State beat, not myself, I was not keyed in on that, but people on the Ohio State beat reported that whole situation up there better than their own people did up there. I mean, it was nothing but just confusion and misinformation coming out of Ann Arbor through that whole situation. And I just as a Michigan fan, of course you deserve better. This is a major program. A major program and a massive fan base, and to think like these guys are just feeding them whatever. But part of that is on Michigan fans because they just eat it all up and they just take it as gospel. But it's weird. It's weird for sure, and it's extended into this quarterback situation. And we'll see if Alex Orji what he does. I have a feeling that Alex Orji is probably not the answer to Michigan's Blues offensively. And if it's not, then please, all these people who like to, as a kid, say, keep the receipts, go pull some of the stuff up and say, where the hell did this come from? To these Michigan beat writers, when they were talking about Alex Orji, or they all of a sudden want to talk about Davis Warren, where was this stuff coming from? Because none of it's come to fruition on the field, and Michigan fans should be very pissed off about that.
I'm very excited for this game. I really want to see what I don't know 100% for sure how for real USC is on defense yet. We're still judging a lot of that on a game against LSU and an offense that they faced not very good, in my opinion. And I think they've shown that since. And they weren't really clicking at all at that point. And then they went out and they shut out Utah State, who fired their coach 3 weeks before the season started with a big scandal. So when that kind of happens, that's like big time disarray. So I'm not so sure how much I believe in that USC defense just yet. Now they're going to get to play Michigan. We'll see what they can do. It's going to be exciting. I think that USC is going to come in there and take care of them by a couple of touchdowns. What are your thoughts on it?
So a lot of what you just said, I'm still not sure that I'm going to buy the USC defense yet. I think this is a big. I don't think it is. It's a big prove-it week for USC to go into a great environment in Ann Arbor. Their first true test, their first test of Big Ten football, and not just the first test, taste of Big Ten football, but true Big Ten football, where Michigan's going to try to grind them, for four.
Right.
For 4 quarters. So it's a big prover game. I think I like USC in the game. I don't know what the spread is right now. I haven't looked lately, but I think I like USC to win the game. But I think that anybody who thinks that USC is going to win this game running away with it, I don't know if I entirely believe that. And maybe I could just be, I could be way off base here. But I'm not going to completely sell Michigan just yet, especially in this type of game that Michigan can't muster a 250-yard rushing performance and again go grind that game out and find a way to steal that game late. I'm not going to say that can't happen. So I like USC, but I think it'll be a good football game. And I could be. I mean, it's a perfect game for Michigan too, because look, if Michigan goes out and lays another egg offensively, and they can't get anything going, and their defense spends a ton of time out on the field, USC is going to take advantage of that eventually. And if they go out and lose a 24-6 or a 27-13 kind of game, and that offense is that bad again, I'm not sure where you go from here other than just throw Jaden Davis out there and say, like, look, we've got to get this kid some time and, at least, get something out of the season if the offense looks that bad again. So,
yeah. And I think that's what makes this, for me, such a big story. Like this is something I can't recall ever seeing with the defending national champion. This is a huge story. If they come out, can't do anything, and then it's the where do you go from here? You're reeling. Like now you're automatically looking at 4 losses immediately because you still got Ohio State and Oregon on the schedule. And then plus whatever else happens between then and now, or now to the game, and they very well could lose it. They got even teams like Washington traveling way out there to go play up there is always a pain for a team over here. It's something. It's something. And I like I said earlier, I said this morning on the show, like they've been so awful for the last year. You're damn well right. I'm going to get my pound of flesh every time I get, every chance I get, bro. Like, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. But I mean, look, that's just, everything that we just said about, Michigan and where the season could be heading is all fair. I mean, those are all things that, Michigan fans are talking about right now. They might not want to admit it to an Ohio State fan, and I get that as well. But these are all things that Michigan fans are talking about as well. I mean, this season could get away from them very, very quickly and get away from them badly if they go out and lay another egg on Saturday, like as you said, with everything that's still to come on their schedule. So it's fascinating for 2 different reasons. With USC trying to assert themselves, and I don't know if they're in the Big Ten talks, but just announce their arrival and show that they're kind of turning the corner in terms of being a team that's not just a fun offense to watch. And then and then Michigan's trying to just hang on for dear life right now.
Yeah, hang on.
Yeah.
Bill, take a look at this real quick. This is the list of out-of-conference games that the Buckeyes have played since 2005, 2006. Texas, Washington, SC, Miami when they were really good, Cal back when they could still play football, Virginia Tech, Oklahoma, TCU, Cincinnati, an in-state guy every once in a while, Oregon, a home and home. Notre Dame, Washington game was canceled this year, as we know. Then we pick back up with a home against Texas, Alabama, and then Georgia. It doesn't get any better than that. Like there you go. 1, 2, 3, right? There you go. This fella came on.
It drives me nuts. I can't stand it. I hold it against them when I do my top 12 rankings every Sunday and they get upset. I'm like, well, play somebody with a pulse. You guys look awesome, but you've played against nobody. So here's the thing. In this game specifically, I got a lot of underdogs because there's just too many daggone.
Doesn't really matter what else he says. The point is, he's acting as though they've played more than 2 games, right? Like they've played in 7 games and they've played nobody. They're 2 games into the season, number one. Number 2, like I said, Ohio State has shown the way of how you schedule out of conference. Like over the last 2 decades, they have shown the way. This is how you do it, guys. Some have followed suit. Most have not. But he comes out and says that, man, and everybody's piling on. I can't stand these morons. What's your take, Dillon?
Well, my first thought when I saw that, and of course I saw it was Danny Cannell, so I rolled my eyes because this is just right up his alley. It's clickbait at its finest. But my first thought was like, I agree with him in the sense that like we don't know, a ton about Ohio State yet because they haven't played anybody. I didn't take from it, unless I missed something else in the clip, I didn't take from it that he was, calling out Ohio State's scheduling in general, because I think he was just talking about specifically this one. And, objectively, this has not been, the most competitive start to the season. But like, then I started looking at the list though, and I thought like, what would it take to quote unquote play somebody? Because he has Georgia in front of them. And who the hell has Georgia played? So basically you just have to play a Power 5 conference or a Power 4 conference team in order for you to qualify as having played somebody, because I believe he has Oregon in front of Ohio State, correct? And they beat up on an Oregon State team that won't win 7 games this year. Georgia beat Kentucky and just held on for dear life. And what do we think of that Kentucky team? So, I mean, it's essentially like you just have to play a Power 4 team, and then all of a sudden you played somebody. That's all it takes. So, I mean, if that's his criteria, then I mean, look. Like most people, I rolled my eyes at Danny Cannell, and I put absolutely zero stock into what Danny Cannell thinks about the ranking of college football. He always tries to be different. He wants to go, against the grain and, whatever everybody else is saying. He wants to say, hey, look at me, I'm Danny Cannell, and I'm going to do it a different way. I've got a different take on stuff, and it's just always what Danny Cannell's been. And I don't have any respect for somebody who wants to just be different at the detriment of like, giving your honest opinion. So do I really think that Danny Cannell thinks that Ohio State's a 7th or whatever he had ranked team in the country right now? No, but it's different, and it got Ohio State fans talking. And I'll be damned if Ohio State fans don't fall for this every time when somebody throws something out there, knowing damn well that the Ohio State fan base, as large as it is and as active as it is on social media, that they're going to jump all over and give him exactly what he wants. And Ohio State fans just hook, line, and sinker.
Dillon, that's not always the case. They come at us. All the other fan bases come at us. Like, you guys don't ever schedule anybody. That's why. Like, what are you talking about? We schedule what do you every year? Look at this, and we're pulling up the receipts. Like, yo,
that's
hey,
fair. Yeah. So other fans, that's fair. I guess I was.
The problem is they say we don't play anybody when we're playing half of our conference. You know what I mean? Like, what do you want us to do?
So you're absolutely right, and you're right about other fans, but that's social media for you. I speaking just about Danny Cannell. Yeah, I just didn't think that he was calling out. But you're right about other fans, and also by the way, sorry, Ohio State's biggest fault in their scheduling every year is that they can't play themselves. Like, sorry that Ohio State doesn't have Ohio State on their schedule. But even then, to your point about what you posted, their out of conference schedules, scheduling has been fantastic. It continues to be fantastic in years to come. And frankly, I don't think some of these games should even be played anymore that Ohio State has scheduled. I don't think in this 12-team playoff era that it really behooves anybody to play those games. As a fan, I think it's a lot of fun, but I don't think it's worth playing. So,
oh my, we're gonna have to take this up on another day.
I'm interested. So you disagree, and which is fine. But I mean, again, as a fan, I love those football games. There's nothing, but I am so jealous. I was so jealous, when Texas and Michigan played, and Ohio State's getting ready to play Western Michigan. Like, I was so jealous that people have those the games and those fan bases have those games to look forward to. But, again, just from a team standpoint, I'm not sure if it.
Yeah, that's why I totally went off yesterday. I was like, Akron, Western Michigan, bye week, Marshall, Michigan, 5 weeks into a season, What? Are you kidding me? And then we get stuck with our first game being Michigan State, who they look a little better than we thought they would, but we know damn well that that's a depleted roster. They all hit the portal. Like, they did what they could, and Jonathan Smith's a really good coach, but they're not going to be able to compete. So we're really looking into, 6 weeks until we get a decent game. But anyway, brother, I appreciate you for coming on. As always, Dillon from the Delaware Gazette. Dillon, tell us where we can find you.
Find me on Twitter at Dillon Davis 56. Find my stuff on delgazette.com. I try to write at least a couple stories a week, depending on what we heard on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. and then write multiple stories after games as well. Always have some good videos on there from player stuff on Wednesdays as well. I know sometimes people don't have time, or nor do they want to sit down and read articles, and I get that. So, the quickest way to get this information out is just to show you or give you the opportunity to hear what these guys said right from their mouths. So I try to post as much video as I can as well. If you can put up with a decent amount of takes about my favorite Boston sports teams, then I think I'm a pretty good follow on Twitter. So, and I love to have conversations.
Great follow. If you can get past the Boston sports thing, which I'll never understand, but whatever. That's probably a whole nother episode.
Yeah,
there.
That's another conversation. You'll understand it, but that's another conversation.
All right. Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
That's a good one. I forgot to ask Dillon about the color game. I wanted to ask Dillon if he wanted to play a color on color. Oh, well, we'll get him next time. We will get him next time. A little bit of recruiting news as the Buckeyes have 4 primary visitors coming to the game against Marshall. We've got out of Warren Harding, 3-star athlete Chaz Coleman. He is really big, 6'5", 225. Got offers from Illinois, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Purdue, among others. Let's see if we got his card here. There he is. Chaz Coleman. So 640th ranked composite player in the country. I don't know what the deal is with this guy. I'll have to watch some film on him. Sounds like a pretty interesting prospect at 6'5", 225 and an athlete. So we'll see. We'll watch some film on him, see what we think, guys. If it's good, I'll bring it to you and let you take a look-see. Out of Rochester, New York, James Monroe. He's a 3-star wide receiver. The number 1 overall prospect in New York is a 3-star, which is crazy. 6 foot, 170. Offer list includes Penn State, Syracuse, Boston College, Michigan, and Wisconsin. I got to pull this guy's card up. All right, so here's what we got. Messiah Hampton out of James Monroe High School in Rochester, New York. 6 foot, 170, wide receiver. Pretty doggone good for a 3-star. He's the number 1 player in the state of New York. Then we've got Chaz Coleman out of Warren Harding. Plays quarterback. He's 6'5", 225. He's obviously a recruit as an athlete. 3-star kid, number 640 overall. Does not have a Buckeye offer yet, but boy, interesting prospect. Ton of size, pretty fast. Kind of looks like TP gliding out there. And then we've got the superstar, Xavier Sabb. This kid is the number 11 ranked player in the country, a 5-star by 247, 6'1", 180, class of 2027. We just watched his freshman film. Unbelievable. Offers from everybody already as a freshman. Georgia, Bama, Ohio State. This dude's the real deal here. And he's going to be in town for the Marshall game. His first visit up to Ohio State. So, fantastic news there. All right, and the not-so-good news, Jerome Myles, wide receiver, who I really wanted to be a Buckeye, has decided to play for USC. If he wasn't going to pick us, I was hoping it was going to be Texas A&M or Utah. Those were the other 2 in his final 3. But he chose SC in the end, and that's a bummer. Did not want to see him at SC, but such is life. I also wanted to show you this. We break Ryan Day's chops every now and again for being pretty cagey, not answering questions. But what he's not is just a jerk. And I ran across the coach's press conference today after practice. It wasn't a press conference, but he was meeting with the press after practice. Just an absolute jerk to the...
Take advantage of that.
Is there anything you guys, and is there any other key things that you guys wanted to work on during this bye week?
Yeah, just us getting better. There's a lot of key things that we're working on, not necessarily things we share with you guys, but there's a lot of stuff internally that we've noticed as weaknesses that we want to improve.
I feel like recruiting's going right now, an opportunity for you guys to get out on the road this week?
Yeah, I think this will be a great week for us to get out there and be able to see some guys and take advantage of that.
Is there anything you guys...
Obviously putting up really nice numbers. Where are some areas though you want to see him get better at?
Yeah, again, I'm not going to share with you guys everything that we want to get better at. I don't think that's your business, right? I really think that's our players' business. But he knows every single one of our players has an individual improvement plan this week.
Is there anything specifically you guys are focusing on this being the first road game of the year?
No, because we had a road game last week.
It's a for Gary's progress in terms of returning to the field? Just where is he at now compared to?
Yeah, continue to assess it. You know, when he's back and ready, we'll be able to use him.
Is Matthew ready to be in the rotation to play a little bit offensively?
Yeah, I think this week and next week will be a great opportunity for us to see that.
And how far away is Rod Pleasant at this point in terms of being able to be a full participant in practice?
Yeah, he's able to help us.
Where are you looking for improvements? We're not sharing that with you. Like, what a jerk, dude. Like, there's ways to not answer without just being a stone cold jerk to everybody. That's the first I've really seen this guy address them in a little junket like that. I'm telling you what, makes me appreciate Ryan Day more and more. You call him soft, call him what you want. He respects people and he says, you know, hello, and he's nice. That guy is a jackass. Anyway, that really turned me off of him, man. That really turned me off. Wait till I send that to Chris. Chris loves him. Calls him young Urban Meyer, and he certainly seems like a young Urban Meyer there. Urban was not too friendly to those guys either. But not Urban in the terms of winning. Not yet, anyway. Anyway, guys, that's our show for today. Join me tomorrow where we will break down all the games, talk about all the fun. We'll probably do a live, and I will see you then tomorrow morning at 9:30. Talk to you then. Juckonbucks out.